time. Ooh, child, this country jungle is too wild. That's why we got more than two styles. To adapt to the situation, too shy. And though the road is rocky, I'm ready to try. The next mile, to bring sight to the blind man. And down to the left child. We will survive in this country wilderness. Swimming through the waters above the line like a rebel fish. Junglist, specialist, predator and survivalist. Spitting heaven, fire from his lips. Burn a slave driver.
Welcome, listeners, to Time for an Awakening on Black Talk Radio Network, new media for the new millennia. This is a history and current events program from a cultural perspective. We find this program necessary because Hosea 4:6 states, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge." But we as a people can turn this around. Proverbs 4:7 states, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom." And with all that, get an understanding. Again, welcome to the program this evening with your hosts, Brother Elliot and Brother Richard. The number to reach us to join the conversation this evening is 215-490-9832. That's 215-490-9832. We're streaming live at several locations. You can go to timeforanawakening.com, which is the home page, and catch the live stream from that location. You can go to www.blacktalkradionetwork.com/Time for an Awakening. Again, that's www.blacktalkradionetwork.com/Time for an Awakening, and catch the live stream there also. You can go to ourradionetwork.com. Again, that's ourradionetwork.com. They broadcast out of the Black Belt and catch the live stream there. Or you can download TuneIn to any of your handheld devices. TuneIn is a free app. And in that TuneIn search engine, just type in Time for an Awakening. There you'll see the icon, and you can stream the program live, even into your car if you have the Bluetooth capabilities or the auxiliary connection. Again, that's Time for an Awakening radio program with the live stream on the TuneIn app. Drop us an email at timeforanawakening@gmail.com. Again, that's timeforanawakening@gmail.com. Time for an Awakening also has a fan page on Facebook. In that Facebook search engine, just type in Time for an Awakening radio program. There you always see interesting content being posted daily by myself or Brother Richard. And do me a favor before you leave that page, just hit that like button. That's Time for an Awakening radio program with the fan page on Facebook, and Time for an Awakening media is there. Always full of the latest podcasts of the various programs on Time for an Awakening. Interesting articles that you can read or download at later times and share with your friends. Also check out that Time for an Awakening marketplace and our partnership with the BB Toomey. Always interesting things in the marketplace all the time. African language classes, classes on education, economics, social systems, health, and much, much more. Being taught by professors on both the continent and in the diaspora. So make that one of your favorites. Put that in your address bar. That's timeforanawakening.com. Timeforanawakening.com will take you straight to Time for an Awakening media. Tonight, a special guest will be joining us, activist and organizer and continental representative of the indigenous peoples of Biafra in the USA will be joining us in conversation. Brother Obadi Obayanu, and if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, he'll be with us shortly to talk about what's going on and what will be going, what they intend to go on this summer here in the United States, centering around what has happened in the country of Biafra. And if you're not familiar with it, our guest tonight will make you familiar with what has went on the continent and is still going on basically to the present day. We'll be right back to get things started after a brief word from our sponsors.
Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies. Everybody is here.
You are listening to Time for an Awakening Media, part of the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasts or live programming, hit them up at timeforanawakening.com.
All Insurance Incorporated, an African-American owned and operated insurance agency in business for over 20 years, located at 231 Southeastern Road in Glenside, PA, with other offices in Germantown and West Philadelphia. Call now for commercial insurance quotes, homeowners insurance quotes, automobile insurance quotes, notary and tax services, representing over 15 major A-rated insurance companies, offering a discount on all notary services when you call in for a free quote. Call this number, 215-885-2444. That number is 215-885-2444. 215-885-2444. All Insurance Incorporated.
Before your roof becomes unruly, call Dooley. Dooley Brothers, specializing in shingle, rubber roofs, gutters, downspouts, and vinyl sidings. Call for your free estimate today. 215-224-3882. That's 215-224-3882. Dooley Brothers Roofing, the roofing experts you can trust. That number again, 215-224-3882. 215-224-3882. Before your roof becomes unruly, call Dooley.
RG Electrical Inspections provides electrical inspections for realtors, licensed electricians, and homeowners. Licensed and insured underwriter, serving Philadelphia and surrounding area. Call today, 484-268-9837.
Overworked? Suffering with an underperforming company, headache customer, staff, or vendors? Or are you a startup who wants to get it right the first time and avoid the costly mistakes? We turned a $24,000 a year odd job handyman service into a 7-figure high-end custom home builder and commercial contractor licensed and operating in 3 states. This is just one transformation created for entrepreneurs like you in various industries around the country. Not what you're used to from accounting and business consulting? Well, welcome to New Business Solutions. If you're ready to go beyond advising, coaching, and training and get implemented results, call 301-244-9072. Let New Business Solutions apply the best comprehensive administrative, accounting, operations, human resources, management, sales, and marketing to help you actualize your vision for yourself and your company. From anywhere nationally, call 301-244-9072. Spelled new as in numerous on your device right now. Book your free consultation at newbusinesssolutions.com.
History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been and what they have been, where they are and what they are. Most important, history tells a people where they still must go, what they still must be. The relationship of history to the people is the same as the relationship of a mother to her child.
From antiquity to the present, our people need to develop a new paradigm. It's time for an awakening with your host, Brother Elliott. Sundays, 7 p.m., Fridays at 8 p.m. For podcasting or live program scheduling, hit us up at timeforanawakening@gmail.com. Welcome back to Time for an Awakening. And before we get started with our program this evening, I want to welcome in my co-host, Philadelphia activist and tour guide at the African American Museum here in Philadelphia at 7th and Arch Street. Brother Richard is with us. Brother Richard.
Yes, sir, Brother Elliott.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. It's one of them slow Sunday, this has been, kind of a little chill in the air and the rain going on. So besides us just having to be in, it makes, I would have been in anyway. But I'm definitely looking forward to our discussion tonight. I think it's going to be interesting in where it will go, especially because of where this, this whole thing of the COVID-19 and how American Africans and Africans all over the world are, thinking about what we need to do in order to make ourselves more, make our public health situation more under our control.
Yes, I think it'll be an interesting conversation based on a lot of things that have been going on in the world, Richard, and then especially in the global African world in the past maybe 3 to 5 years. It's been a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of things happening rapidly. And it's time for our people that are sitting on the sidelines that are not involved in doing something is to get involved in changing this paradigm, because it's happening rapidly. Other people are trying to get out in front of this thing to steer it in their directions for their own purposes and for their nationalities' purposes. But it's time for us to get involved in the direction of our own people and to decide the direction of our own people and for our children.
Right.
Tonight's discussion with our guests is going to lend some understanding to some issues going on in the African world and how it basically mirrors some of the things going on here, Richard.
Right.
Our guest this evening, activist, organizer, and continental representative of the indigenous people of Biafra in the USA, Brother Obadi Obienu is with us, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, brother.
You are, Brother Elliot. You did very well pronouncing my name, but actually the last name is Obienu. Obienu.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm glad to have you on Time for Awakening with myself and Brother Richard.
How you doing, brother?
Thank you guys for having me, Brother Richard. I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Brother Obienu, before we get started and talk about some of the things that you have planned here for the summer, and hopefully things will be a little more eased where you can be able to go through these things, go through some of your plans. But I know if it has to be postponed, that's not going to change your objective. But give our listeners a little historical background on what has happened in Nigeria, the people of Biafra, how this basically mirrors some things that have went on in the United States among Africans that are in diaspora here. Talk about the dynamics of what has went on in the country and how it reflects on what happened in the Berlin conferences and how all this stuff plays in. Give us a little historical background, Brother Obienu.
Thank you, Brother Elliot. Again, for the interest of the listeners, my name is Obidi Obienu. I am coordinating American continent for the indigenous people of Biafra. And that's what I do for Biafra. It's a service area. It's a voluntary type of work because on the side I have my job. But indigenous people of Biafra are people, over 60 million people who occupy the area in the present Nigeria. The southeast part of Nigeria, we're over 60 million in number. And a lot of times, our brothers here does not quite understand how huge Africa is. Mm-hmm. And we have the 60 million in this part of Nigeria as we speak right now. Historically, Biafrans came all the way from Egypt prior to the Exodus. And when they migrated, they came to this part of this land called Nigeria. It's been a long time. Some people, it depends on the historians, some people date it as far back as 4,000 years. Some people say 1100 BC. But the thing is, the true story is that Biafrans migrated from Egypt during the time of Pharaoh.
Okay.
And then Biafra, the brother called God. We are descendants of God, one of the sons of Jacob. And during that time, I guess he foresaw what is going to be of the sufferings of the people in the land, and he decided to leave. But just bringing it closer to where we are, Biafrans, as I said before, can be found in the southeastern part of the present Nigerian, and they have been there before the colonial masters. In that same area, we have other empires, something like the Benin Empire, we have the Oyo Empire, we have the Borno Empire, we have the Hausa Kingdom, Hausa states. And these are all numerous ancient African civilizations which settle in this current place called Nigeria before the coming of the colonial masters. Down the line, after the Berlin Conference, of course, for the interest of people who does not fight that, it was a time that the Europeans decided to share up countries in Africa, or nations in Africa. And that conference took place in the 1984 to 1985. And that resulted in the reformatting of Africa without considering cultural and linguistic borders that are already established by these different civilizations. And during this period, there was a heightened colonial activities in Africa by the European powers, which kind of eliminated or overrode most existing forms of African autonomy and self-governance. After the colonial masters, between the 1800s and the 1900s, they created Nigeria and then left. But up to tomorrow, we are still under the control of the colonial masters. I will stop so far so that you can key me in, because I'm not a good historian, but I'm here to give as many facts as possible.
Now, Brother Obiano, let me go back a little bit. Because I want our people to understand that the countries that they see now, and a lot of our listening audience do, but just in case we got new listeners that may not be familiar with Time for an Awakening, a lot of countries that we see now on the continent has not been established by indigenous Africans or some of our ancestors. These countries and the names of a lot of the countries were established and given to them by Europeans.
And that's exactly where Biafra comes in, because we have been a group of people. We've been a nation before the coming of the colonial masters. As a matter of fact, Nigeria, as the country they call it today, it has so many groups of people that are forced together in that contraption called Nigeria today.
Okay.
The history of Nigeria started in 1914, which they call the amalgamation of the 1914.
So when Europeans figured that they would amalgamate millions of people under a form of government and into a country for their purposes, that disregarded the rights and sovereignty of millions of African brothers and sisters.
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to explain when I mentioned the number of people that are Biafran.
Okay.
50 million people. And with the advent of the colonial masters, they joined us. The amalgamation means a combination. And this combination was done for their interest, the labor market.
Okay.
It was done for their interest. It's not for our interest. So they combined us. There's this thing they call the indirect rule. For instance, in the northern part of Nigeria, they have their emirs and the traditional rulers over there. In the southwest, the Yoruba land, they have Obas and people. And in the southeast, which is the current Biafra land, we have elders and people of title holders that run the affairs of the people before the coming of the white man. So we have different ways of running our communities and our nations before they came.
Okay.
So when they came, they have to introduce. Of course, you know that colonialism comes with a lot of things. It affects the way of life. They bring in their religion. They also will bring in their laws. So they use that for control. The indirect rule is a way they kind of manipulated the system that's already existing, and they appointed people who they think that they are loyal to them.
Okay.
Who will now force other group of people to follow what they desire to do in that part of the country.
Okay, so now let's take it up to, and Richard, if you want to go back, the door is always open. I want to take it up to 67 or in the 60s when the conflict broke out between the indigenous Biafrans and the Nigerian government that was set up by Europeans. Talk about that.
Now, 1967, there was this thing they call the Nigerian Civil War, but it's actually not Nigerian Civil War. It was a proxy war by the British, the USSR, and the Egyptians, and the Arab League that they imposed on Biafra. And what was the result of this war? Like I mentioned earlier, when you mix people together, people with different background, different culture, different languages, different belief systems, what happens? There's always contentions, always rancor. And in this situation, it was against the Biafrans. Because during the colonial masters, or when the colonial masters arrived, the Biafrans were open to them. We accepted their religion, we accepted their culture, we accepted their education. Unlike the other disparate part of that Nigeria in the north, they said they don't need their education, they don't need their religion, they don't need nothing from them, and they allowed them to be. But we embraced the colonial masters, learned from them. So as the turn of events, the Biafrans were ahead as far as in everything, in the production, in every contribution in that part of in that Nigeria. Biafrans were ahead of everything. And that created problems for other groups in Nigeria. The problem it created, it becomes a problem with jealousy. It becomes a problem with when people say, you think you are all that. And as a result, Biafrans were killed on different terms, in different, there's a timeline of the killing of Biafrans in the northern part of Nigeria. Started from 1945. So we're talking about 67. There's been problems. 1945, thousands of Biafrans were killed in the north. And in 1953, thousands of Biafrans were killed in a city called Kano City. And it went all the way to 66. when thousands of Biafrans were killed in the north, and caused Biafrans to say, no, this killing will not continue. And that's what actually started the war. In the beginning of that so-called civil war, there were efforts by the leaders of the Biafrans, and on the other side and the efforts by the leaders of the other groups, particularly the northern leaders. There were efforts to stop this problem. They got to Ghana, a place they call Aburi, and made discussions and agreed to stop this mayhem. They agreed to settle the situation. And once they came back from Aburi, Ghana, the northern leader, who is General Gowon, violated everything that was discussed and agreed on the advice of the brigade. And they jumped on Biafra and killed over 6 million.
Now, Richard, I want you to jump in, but let me say this before you do. Brother Obiano, when was so-called independence declared from Britain by Nigeria? When was that?
It was 1960.
1960?
1960, essentially, flag independence is not really independence because it's selected few individuals who we put in there, and they still, even before they leave, they had an arrangement that we are going to leave, but we're going to give you independence. Again, it's a flag independence. It's not complete independence from the British.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because I was going to read this quote before I turn it over to Brother Richard. It was a quote by then U.S. Secretary of State Dean Rusk, and it happened on July 27th, 1967, when the war broke out. Well, when the war was already going on. He made a statement in behalf of the United States as the Secretary of State, and he said it was reported that the United States government regarded the situation as the primary responsibility of Britain, and America was sure that Britain would be equal to the task of continuing to maintain Western influence in Nigeria. Now, this is something for our people to understand. The war broke out 7 or 8 years after independence was so-called declared from Great Britain. But the United States said that they wasn't getting involved in that conflict because it was British responsibility. They were in control of the area, and they were supposed to maintain Western influence in the area. This was the official statement from the United States based on what was going on there. I just want to throw that in, Richard, before you jumped in.
You know, and y'all, and I'm glad that you set the basis of the history. Now, one question comes to mind: when did the and what is the indigenous people of Biafra? Is that a political party or a political association? What is it, and when did that entity, if I got this right, came into being?
Please, one more time for your question.
When did the entity of the indigenous people of Biafra come into? Is that a party or is that a political association for the people of Biafra?
It's not a political party. We are a nation.
You're a nation.
As I earlier mentioned, 60 million people, inhabitants of the present part of the Middle Belt, Midwest, entire southeastern region of this fraudulent Nigeria. And we have different groups. The area is about 30,000 square miles. We have different groups. The Igbos, where I come from, because you hear the Igbos. We have the Ididios, we have the Ijos, we have the Bantes, we have the Sobos or the Robos, we have the Chekiri, Idoma, and Egala. These are large groups of people that make up Biafra. The indigenous people, the indigenous is simply that we have been there. We have been in this land, and we have our names as Biafra before the British came.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he counted the people, you. I want you to be a country called Nigeria. By the way, do you know that that name, Nigeria, actual meaning was it's a Niger area.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a language that is indigenous to any of the people that call themselves Nigeria. It's actually from a man called, the girlfriend of a man called Lord Lugard. After, in a party, they decided, the boyfriend asked her, what do you think you're going to name these animals over here? And they came up with that name. And that's what we are trying to undo, because we have a name before that name was given us. As you can see, Niger area.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the name of a country.
And along that, one thing I noticed is the colors of the flag, and I was wondering, that's the reason why I wanted to get the name. When did it? Now I see it's red, black, and green with a sun in the middle. Is that the flag of Biafra?
Yeah.
Yes. And so how long was that? I mean, when did that arrangement? Because I'm thinking of, when I see these colors, I'm thinking of the UNI, Universal Negro Improvement Association, and African Communities League. So I'm trying to also put in a time frame of when if it was already selected, or was it selected during that period?
It was selected actually in 1967 when Biafra was reproclaimed, I would say. Actually, in Africa, we don't know what is flag. We don't deal with flags to establish a nation. Nations are organically formed by language, cultural relativism, religious, connections and everything. It's not about flag.
Right.
The flag of a thing was introduced by the British. So the flag you're looking at was 1967, and I can tell you what that flag stands for. You see, there is a black smoke. You see the green, black, and there's a sun in there. Okay, and I can tell you exactly what that flag stands for, because it's amazing that I happen to see that what we have here in America with the Black Panthers is the same thing, except that there is no sun. If you look at the green was the green pasture, which is the resources in that land. It's so much God's given resources, but that resources is blocked by a black darkness. And the top is the flame. But with the sun in the middle means, and that sun you can see is half. It's yet coming out. It's yet to come out. And we are looking forward that sun will come out and become full blown, so that every African, and when I say African, in the context of even African Americans here, will benefit from this nation that we're talking about. When that full sun comes out, I mean, it's going to be really amazing, because there's so much in this land that the British has been killing us for. They have jumped on us, stayed there, and nobody knows what is going on. If I can tell you so many people that has been killed just to have that portion of land. I mean, it's another story for another day. But that land is green for whatever reason. God in heaven led our forefathers to that place. And that's the problem we find ourselves in. That because of the God-given natural resources, we are being killed for that. Unfortunately, the amalgamation was to have the northern part of the country who are answerable to them to continue to kill us. So when you look at it, you will see, oh, it's black on black crime. It's not black on black crime. It is the work of the British using the Northerners to keep us where we are so that people will not know what is going on. And when they come here, they'll say, black are killing black. No, it's the British who are supplying them with weapons. It is them that is killing us indirectly. So that's what is going on there.
And I wanted to touch on that but the other thing I wanted to say is because what I see in Biafra is what some of us here, African Americans, is or Africans in America want to have that take a sovereign position of our own because of our own security sense based off our particular history. But you mentioned earlier about, to just clarify that the indirect rule, is that when you mentioned about the Northerns, which we are saying that, is it the Muslim population, the House of Fulani of the North, that are working in collaboration with the British that has a challenge with the national formation of Biafra?
That's exactly what it is. And unfortunately, ironically, this situation is so convoluted that sometimes you are short of even words to begin to describe this. Like I mentioned before, when the colonial masters came, we accepted everything about them because we tend to be Republican by nature. We don't have people that, like the chiefs that dominate everybody. No, we are arranged in such a way that we are egalitarian society, if that will help in a word. Egalitarian society. But in the North, the structure, the organizational structure is different. They have the emirs, they have the sultans, and these were as a result of their religious background. The Islamic, they're Muslims, essentially. And we all, with the current event of things, we can feel how this is going on. So they are Muslims. They also did not open up for the British. They did not want anything to do with the Western religion. They don't want anything to do with Christianity or whatever. But we accepted the British. We embraced them. We took it because even before they came, we already know the Most High God. We'll call God Olisebidi, which means God that lives in heaven. So we appreciated them when they came with the religion and everything, and embraced them. Ironically, the British is using the North, who said to hell with British education, to hell with British religion, to subjugate us, to keep us in abject poverty. Isn't that ironic? The people that believe them are now put aside.
Wow. We look at again pushing the possible similarities other than the specific history as far as being a colonized people and even even though we see ourselves, which raises another question. I see that you have a march, I believe it's a march planned for May at the U.S. Capitol.
That's correct.
And so is this to petition the U.S. government for what?
Yeah, it's called the 2020 March. It's a freedom march for Biafrans and all lovers of freedom. So we are inviting everyone that loves freedom, be it African American, the Nigerians, because so many Nigerians are in bondage, with this arrangement in Nigeria. The Yorubas alike. I have not mentioned them here. There are so many things going on there. So this march is for freedom lovers. And we are inviting you and Brother Elliot to this march. It's for anyone that loves freedom to come to the open in Washington to present our petition to the United States. We have been calling on the UN for a long time to see through our pains and sufferings. I see, all these entities, very difficult to penetrate them because they always tell you about the sovereignty of nations. And yet, they're the ones that talks about human rights abuses and human rights violations. But when you present the issues of what is going on in Nigeria, they don't investigate it. Sometimes they say if they want to investigate it, they go back to the same government in Nigeria to investigate these issues. And they come back, Nigeria will give them their report. And they will say, oh, these are lies. These are, what is it called? The new age social media. But these are real stories. People die every day. As we are speaking right now, our land is under occupation. You may recall the Nigerian president that visited Trump in 2018. Trump has to tell him that he needs to work on killing of the Christians, who are primarily Biafrans. Biafrans are predominantly Christians. It has gotten to a stage that Trump has to speak up and tell him that you need to work on stopping the killing of Christians. Till date, it's still ongoing. Even in the wake of this COVID-19 pandemic, what is happening in our land is they locked us under chain and keys. Nothing, no relief provided to the poor masses. In the northern part of Nigeria, they are wide open. They are protesting. You can't even stop them from. As a matter of fact, they had a riot the other day because they told them to stay indoors and not convert to their mosque. In Biafra land has been under siege for years, and the British is playing a good role by blocking all these things. The CNN, the BBC, as you know, they present what you want to see. And we have been crying for all these years behind the shadows. They are blocking us in any form. So what the march is set to do is to bring these things to the limelight of the people. If you love freedom, if you appreciate that even God in heaven with humanity allows us freedom to make choices, we are calling on you to join us that day, June 20, 2020. Except if the government does not permit. But we are keeping cool. We are even praying that this pandemic will be over, that the states will open so that this march will take place. But if for whatever reason it didn't happen, it's still going to happen, because this is one chance, one avenue that Biafrans have to present their case. We have presented our cases even through the West African, they call them the ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African States. All this creation, OAU, the current AU now, we have presented our cases through them. But at this time, they go back to their so-called bureaucracy. They'll begin to tell you, oh, we are not supposed to hear this. We protect the integrity of the nation. Meanwhile, people are dying. How long will this continue? All these organizations, Amnesty International, all of them, there's nowhere we have not gone to present our case. So this time around, the purpose of this march is to ask the general population, the American population, peace peace-loving people in the United States to come and hear us out. To come and hear us out to support the freedom of Biafra. Because we have been in bondage in this 21st century. Biafrans are being kept in darkness. Blood is flowing in my land as I'm speaking to you right now, and nobody's talking about it.
And go ahead, Richard. Finish your thought.
Yeah, I was just, because I see the similarities, and not the similarities in specific history, but the similarities of the colonialism,
yes,
the colonial experience for North Americans, and because I think that we here, Africans in North America, should think, since we are here, we should be supporting be supporting Biafra because of the human rights position that and the devastation of deaths, but also because of just our own connection of wanting to be self-governing and see the benefit of that self-governing, which makes me raise the question, is there a large population in North America of Biafrans, and what has been their relationship with making connections, even as it relates to this coming March, with the African Americans, if not the official leadership, because we might see, some of us might see that being a part, those individuals might be a part of that indirect rule, say, but just as a part of the community, creating a community relationship with African Americans that are here. The short of it is there a natural relationship being developed between the Biafran community and the African American community on any level?
Yes, there are ongoing relationships. For myself, who is talking as a Biafran, I do know that over 50% of African Americans here in the United States are from Biafra during the slave trade. And it's no telling, because you can tell from the way the African Americans here, their works and their resilience in all that they do. And all the things they are, the successes they have made in this land. The Biafrans are known for their hard work. And over 50% of African Americans are from Biafra. I don't know if you're aware of a place they call the Igbo London in Georgia. Igbo London, some of these Biafran brothers were brought over there and they refused to serve. And walked into this water. Some people say they disappeared. Some people say they drowned. But the key word is that Biafra is for all African Americans. Biafra is where you come from. You can come back and reclaim that land. It's a wide open invitation to all African Americans in the United States to come back to Biafra. As you see, a lot of times, you may not even hear about Biafra because, again, a lot of blanketing by the major media. All they tell you is hunger in Africa, but they don't tell you of these great resources that are in that land. As we are speaking right now, the Chinese are pushing over there too, and they are tapping, and we are being robbed naked. So what we're asking African Americans is to join and support the restoration of Biafra. I believe that charity begins at home. My wife of 25 years is from Los Angeles. I'm building bridges. I know that we can build bridges through intermarriages and everything. We can also build bridges from common understanding. Okay? So, what we're trying to do is to bring this to the limelight of people and let people make decisions. As you know, when you're fighting with a monster, it's very difficult. We lack resources to push this the restoration effort, and our people here in the United States, most Biafrans here, don't even want to talk about it. Guess what? They are so scared.
Okay.
Because of what is happening in our land. They are so scared to even mention that they are Biafrans. In Nigeria, you cannot say you are Biafran. You cannot mention that name because they want to kill you. You know, what you get is threat. I mean, in 21st century, people cannot stand up and make an argument. What Biafrans are asking them today is just simply referendum. Let people make the choice where they want to be. If we want to continue as Nigerians, or if we want to be Biafran. But at this time, what they do is they tell you, Britannia on the other side is, this is the most populous and largest economy in Africa. We should ensure the integrity of the whatever, to make sure that they keep us one. These are 200 million. Britain is just 50 million people. They are separate. Europe is different. Different countries in Europe, they have 5 million, 3 million. Some countries are 1 million because of what brings them together.
Mm-hmm.
Our own is that they are saying we must stay together, whether we are together or not. So it's so horrible that even Biafrans in the United States are many Biafrans here are so scared of talking about Biafra because, one, they are scared that if Nigeria is monitoring the activities in the United States, anytime they travel home to see some of their loved ones, they'll be arrested and killed because all they know is killing. To take life is nothing to them. They cannot stand and argue with you. They cannot make reasonable arguments. It's just killing, beheading, cutting off pregnant women's stomach and ripping off their children. So the reason why I sound the way I sound is to tell you how deep this is. And we are asking African Americans to support Biafra. That's your home anyway. So you can stand up and reclaim what belongs to you. Historically, we know how we got over here. It is time for us to work together to have one place that we call home. We are endowed with everything. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about all these things. Biafra has all it takes. That portion of land has all it takes. And that's why we are trying to raise the consciousness of African Americans who were removed there some 400 or 500 years ago to here.
Brother Obiano,
see the need to fight to getting this land back. By the way, the name Biafra means come and join.
Brother Obiano, when you talked about the the war that broke out in 67 to 70 or early 70s, and you mentioned that the Soviet Union, Egypt, and Europe was involved in supporting the regime set up in Nigeria at the time. What was we already know the European interest in keeping that government, as it were, so to speak, or the neo-colonial setup in functioning. But what was, if you know, what was Russia's interest and what was Egypt's interest? Was Egypt's interest purely religious, being that they had similar Arab background, or what was their interest in what was going on?
Russia's interest is being able to sell their weapons because the British were not coming out openly and supporting Nigeria, even though they were the colonial masters. So what they did is to ask Russia to sell weaponry to the Nigerian army.
Okay.
Whereas they themselves, the British, used the naval ship to do what they call the blockade that cost millions of Biafran children to die of hunger. They refused anybody to come in to help Biafra. It was a war, a genocidal war that they fought, killing, a lot of children, with just starving them to death. The Egyptian interest, I'm not quite sure, but it's all about money. The Egyptian pilots were said to be physically piloting the warplanes that they were using to bomb Biafra land indiscriminately. Whatever deal they reach, I'm not at leave. I don't have that information. That is all about monetary interest to subdue Biafrans.
So, Brother Obiano, when we watch the television here and see propaganda reports, and I'll use that term loosely, news reports about what's going on the continent, and they always seem to focus on something negative. When we see stories about Boko Haram kidnapping young girls and the 200 girls, 300 girls, what is going on from your knowledge of the area and the knowledge of the people there? What exactly is going on?
Yeah, from my perspective, the Boko Haram 200, the so-called Boko Haram, the Chibok girls, was a hoax. From my understanding, I protected against that in a park called the Mad Park here. We were there. The media were blocking us. The Channel 4, Channel 5 was there. They didn't want us to say anything. They were even threatening us to move away from the crowd. Okay, because right from time we knew that was a hoax. I called MSNBC, numerous presenters, and told them that this is a hoax. The idea of the Boko Haram or the Chibok girls was to defend the president at that time, Jonathan, to make him seem incompetent, because America has interest to come in and work with these people in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, Obama was the president. He has an interest. If you check, you will see Obama. Obama invited northern leaders. These are Muslims in the United States. The first time a president of a country invited a section of a country, they tell you that we want unity of this country. He invited a section of the governors in the northern area to the United States in White House to talk deal with him. And you also, if you go and check, even Google has it, Secretary Kerry was sent to Nigeria to go specifically to Islamic town called Sokoto, August 26, 2016. Obama himself sent his campaign manager, David Axelrod, to campaign against Jonathan, who was the president at that time. So it was a cooked-up story to undermine Jonathan, to make him seem incompetent, to show how this government will be, and these girls were missing, and he's not doing anything about it. How come that Jonathan wasn't fighting the Boko Haram? But in real sense, the Boko Haram is a northern armed front. The northerners cooked up Boko Haram. From what you see today, you see the president of Nigeria, the so-called president of Nigeria, we know that they don't have the same man there, but they have manufactured somebody to be seen as the president. Looking at all the killings, the past few years, it is more than 5,000 killings. And the man has not condemned any of these killings. Yeah, a few days ago, or a few weeks ago, you see the Chadian president take off his uniform as an army and went to fight Boko Haram, to the point that he killed a lot of Boko Haram, took possession of their weapons and chase them right in Nigerian border. Go beyond Nigerian border, calling on Nigerian government, the army, to come and take over the land they have taken over from Boko Haram. The Nigerian military did not go. What we see is the Islamic terrorist group of Nigeria is using Boko Haram to decimate Christians, nothing else. So when you're talking about Chibok girls, that's just a scam that was played to the world to appeal for emotions of the world. As you know, America, 250-something girls, everybody was crying. Bring back our girls, bring back our girls. Now, Brother Elliot, let me ask you this question. These girls were picked up in a location, according to them, where they went to do exam. And the number is 267. And nobody knew what kind of vehicle they were used to remove them from that location. Nobody knew where they were taken. 267. We are talking about these storage buses, about 5, if they use storage buses, or if they had used a long truck, maybe 3 of the long trucks, will contain these individuals. And nobody knows when they were removed. And few days after they were removed, we saw a portion of those girls reciting Quran in the television screen. Mm-hmm. According to them, they forced them to learn Quran in 3 days. Okay, so there's a lot of falsehood in this whole thing. Obama sent Secretary Kerry to the northern part of Nigeria, and they had a deal to continue their Islamization agenda. And what happened? Kerry went over there to meet. Sokoto is not the capital city of Nigeria. Okay? And immediately after, then the money we have paid to United States to send them helicopters to be waging wars against Boko Haram. If it wasn't for Senator Cory Booker, I believe, and this other guy, what's his name, from Kentucky? It's another senator. His father was once a presidential candidate. I keep forgetting his name, because if it wasn't for him, Nigeria would have gotten those helicopters at the cost of $623 million to continue to do their killing in Biafra land, because all the weapons that America is supplying them, none of them is being used to fight Boko Haram. What Nigeria is doing is they mobilize the people from Biafra who are still in Nigerian army, and send them to the war front unequipped. They will send them to the war front unequipped, because it's a systematic way of eliminating a lot of Biafrans who will resist them. And then they will go up there, and the Boko Haram will run them over, because they don't have equipment to fight them. Meanwhile, Nigeria is going about coming to the United States, getting weapons, going to Turkey, getting weapons. I mean, what are Americans not looking at? Even in the course of that Chibok girls, remember, every country, France, America, they're all running to help. A few days later, America said, you know what? It's in the history. America said, well, these people are so in a mess. America left.
So you were saying running to help the northern.
Running. Yeah, they're all winning, thinking they are getting the truth. When they get there, they find out that these people are liars. They quickly withdrew. We have this man they call Buhari, President Buhari. who has been killing. His primary agenda is Islamization of the entire country. So the killing of Christians is not by accident. Again, the Chibok girls is just a scam to appeal to the world to see that Jonathan it's not worth it. It's not supposed to be a president. So they pushed Jonathan out. They want him to leave or he'll be killed because all they do is killing.
Wow. And the folks that's behind it. Listen, we're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, you can get involved in the conversation by dialing 215-490-9832. Again, that's 215-490-9832. We're talking to activist, organizer, and continental representative of the indigenous people of Biafra in the USA, Brother Obadi Obayenu. And again, you can get involved in the conversation by dialing 215-490-9832. That's 215-490-9832. Time for an awakening. We'll be right back.
Listening to Time for an Awakening. Time for an Awakening with host Brother Elliot and Brother Richard on Time for an Awakening Media, part of the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasting or live program scheduling, hit them up at timeforanawakening@gmail.com.
All Insurance Incorporated, an African-American owned and operated insurance agency and business for over 20 years, located at 231 Southeastern Road in Glenside, PA, with other offices in Germantown and West Philadelphia. Call now for commercial insurance quotes, homeowners insurance quotes, automobile insurance quotes, notary and tax services, representing over 15 major A-rated insurance companies, offering a discount on all notary services when you call in for a free quote. Call this number, 215-885-2444. That number is 215-885-2444. 215-885-2444. All Insurance Incorporated.
Before your roof becomes unruly, call Dooley. Dooley Brothers, specializing in shingle, rubber roofs, gutters, downspouts, and vinyl sidings. Call for your free estimate today. 215-224-3882. That's 215-224-3882. Dooley Brothers Roofing, the roofing experts you can trust. That number again, 215-224-3882. 215-224-3882. Before your roof becomes unruly, call Dooley.
I transformed a $24,000 a year odd job handyman service into a 7-figure high-end custom home builder and commercial contractor licensed and operating in 3 states. This is just one of the tangible transformations I've created for entrepreneurs in various industries around the country. If this isn't what you think of when you think of accounting and business consulting, then get ready to take down this invaluable information. Are you an entrepreneur suffering with a stagnating company? Have headache customer, staff, or vendors? Are you rebounding from a loss and need help achieving your unrealized potential? Or are you a startup who wants to get it right the first time and avoid the costly mistakes? Hi, my name is Nataki Kanban. If you're ready to go beyond advising and coaching and get results, then call 301-244-9072. Let New Business Solutions recommend and implement the best comprehensive sales, administrative, human resources, accounting, and operations to help you grow into your vision for yourself and your company. Again, from anywhere nationally, call 301-244-9072 or pull us up on your device right now and book your free consultation at www.newbusinesssolutions.com. And just mention you heard this special announcement on Time for an Awakening.
RG Electrical Inspections provides electrical inspections for realtors, licensed electricians, and homeowners. Licensed and insured underwriter, serving Philadelphia and surrounding area. Call today, 484-268-9837.
I must be measured by my soul. The mind is the standard of the man. With this new sense of dignity and this new sense of self-respect, a new Negro came into being with a new determination to suffer, to struggle, to sacrifice, and even to die if necessary in order to be free.
Hang on to the world as it spins around.
All our people are righteous by nature, wicked by circumstance, so we are going to try to save our people. Take control of our communities. Anybody that wants justice, come out of those parties that won't give you justice, and let's have a justice party and set up our own candidates, run them in the cities, take down the weak, blood suckers of the poor, and cast them out, and set up people that will fight for justice for us.
Because there's a whole lot of illusions about Africa's relationship with other people in the world. There's a whole lot of illusion about our relationship to the religions in the world. And these belief systems that had its origin in Africa, all of them, and there is no exception, turned on African people. I said there is no exception. And there's one thing you have to get through your mind and keep it. Nothing that ever came from the European mind was meant to do anything but facilitate European domination of the world. And I said there's no exception. Everything that was brought into this continent, everything, every idea, every so-called religion was meant to dominate and to control. The Arabs had no illusions about it. The Europeans had no illusions about it. You were the ones with the illusions. And yet every element that went into the making of every major religion in the world started in Africa. Why is it that you are so naive? You let people redress something that you invented, sell it back to you, and enslave you through it.
If we are to defeat the European, if we are to master this earth and take back this earth from the European, then we must outthink the European. We must then be creative. That puts the learning emphasis on the how-ness, the how to think as such, and to the use of knowledge as a tool of mastery. So it's a very different kind of thing. As a result, you see, of the control and the paternalism of Europeans over black people. You see, the other thing that we must recognize, even if the European becomes good and nice and accepts us and so forth, the fact that he would still be in control creates what we might call a benevolent paternalism, which still to a great degree helps to maintain this passive mode of thinking, this passive mode of knowledge.
Welcome back to Time for an Awakening, and we're in conversation tonight with activist, organizer, and continental representative of the indigenous people of Biafra in the United States, Brother Obidi Obayenu. You can get involved in the conversation by dialing 215-490-9832. That's 215-490-9832.
You know, Brother Ellie, before you go to the callers, may I say something that's just kind of like burning with me right now as I hear this.
I want to say something too, but go ahead. Go ahead, Richard. Go ahead. Finish.
I apologize.
You might be saying the same, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Because the whole thing of, we're hearing, Brother mention the outright slaughter of Biafra and, and the, and also the U.S. involvement, in that. And the two things that I want to, and I apologize to the listening audience, but, and to the brother representative, to be arrogant about, because we African Americans have to be a little bit more mature about our support for these foreign policy positions. And you heard him mention about how Obama and what's his name, Kerry, and who they are, do you say, in bed with? And at the same time, you hear that you don't hear much of the African American community having a foreign policy position. And I consider it a foreign policy position. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have to say that it is unjust to be slaughtering of people in Nigeria, especially if we have historical ties. That's one thing that, our maturity, our political foreign policy maturity, our politics have to become more mature, because you couldn't see that happening of other ethnic groups where that kind of injustice, and it speaks to a broader thing, but just for us, and I think that's important. And the other part, Brother Representative, that especially, and I understand the fear and the deaths that are occurring, but to speak to the Biafra community in North America specifically, and to African Americans, I think that we have to, in spite of our fear and our ignorance, try to work to have better practical working relationships so that we can strengthen our ties to fight a monster. And in my mind, that's what it is. And if we don't, because of our fear, or we don't because of our ignorance, we only really feed the monster. So I think that the Biafra communities in North America have to understand that the same kind of response they get from the AU, from the Nigerian parliament, they will get from the Black Congressional Caucus. But we have to create ties at another level in order to be able to really to make the success for freedom and make the march successful, in the sense of all of us coming together. Because if we work in silos, it just, in my mind, it just won't work. And if we don't even know, and I appreciate you being able to outreach to us here at Time for Awakening, so that we can be able to inform the larger community, not just about the march, but just to reinforce the atrocities. Because as you say, Elliot, do we get that in the news? What is going on? I don't think so. So I just make the appeal that for African Americans, we have to grow up in our political foreign policy initiative. I mean, yes, even while we're dealing with the coronavirus, that's something that they're saying is going to affect all African people all over the world. Not just here in North America, or here in Philadelphia, or here in California, or here in New York. It's, Uganda, South Africa. If we don't work together to change the tide, and to the Biafran community, there is things that we can do together to strengthen our ties. And I just felt compelled to say that, and hopefully I'm not, stepping out of boundary in doing that.
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, what I was going to mention, kind of before we go back to our guests and to the callers, kind of dovetails on what our ancestors said in that collage of speeches. Amos Wilson, when he said, in order to defeat the European, we have to outthink the European. See, when they set up this system that we live under now, Brother Richard and Brother Obiano, this system of white hegemony and white domination, it wasn't haphazard. They thought this out. They had plan B, C, D if it didn't work. And we have become victims of this because we're not responding to them in a more unified, intelligent fashion. And I'll give an example, Richard. I want you to speak to this before we go back to our guest. We heard Brother Obiano describe what's going on there in the killings and the weapons being supplied by Europe, by Britain, at one time being funneled through Russia. I have no doubt that the America is involved in some type of weapon sales. I just read to you the ambassador's report at that time, or statement, saying that they was leaving this up to Great Britain because it was their responsibility, even though Nigeria was so-called a independent nation at that time. It said that they was leaving it up to Europe to maintain Western influence in Nigeria. So when you got weapons being sold to brothers and sisters on the continent, to be used against brothers and sisters on the continent, not to be used against Europeans, what's the difference, Richard, in black communities being cordoned off? You basically live in your own communities. They want to call them ghettos or whatever. And drugs being pushed into these communities. We don't produce them, just like a lot of the African nations don't produce these weapons. We don't produce these drugs. They're funneled into communities. You got a segment that are selling the drugs for somebody else, for the man. You got a segment that are using the drugs. You got a segments that are fighting to get territory so they can become the big kingpins and the drug dealers. And then you got masses of people that are just victims in the community. What is the difference, Richard? It's just they got the same playbook. They're just changing. If anybody's familiar with sports, they're using a playbook and they're just changing little nuances of the plays. It's the same thing. What's going on in my neighborhood is going on the continent on a larger scale. And while we're sitting here, all these other people is in the community just taking all the economic base out of the community, whether it's Asians, Latinos, everybody else. So when our people here in their naivete talk about, oh, look what's going on the continent. You got these Chinese in there. You got these other people, and they fighting this and that. What's going on in our community? Is it the same thing, Richard, or am I wrong? Help me out.
No, it's the same thing. And those who are standing on the sidelines, the question is, what is our moral imperative? Because the brother ambassador, representative is asking us to participate in a righteous, or truthful cause as far as this march on May 20th, 2020. But at the same time, here, we have a large Muslim population, right? African Americans have a large Muslim population. And what I'm hearing is, and I don't, but we know our oppression. And therefore, the whole question of our Muslim population, what is the moral imperative to speak to the injustice that are happening to the Biafra people by Islamic or Muslims, especially now that we're in the moment of Ramadan? This, as you laid out, this is just locally and internationally connected, and we have a responsibility. That's so, yeah, Elliot, and I hope that we're all on in this moment, and on the same accord, that we have to be supporting each other, even if we have fear, even if we have death. We have to, because the only way we're going to get strong to have power to overcome this is when we're unified to overcome this, it seems to me.
That's the only way. And we have to, listen, if people don't want to get involved in marching or with the brothers and sisters down there, then it's other ways you can do that. Call your representative. Call your black representative, your council person, your senator if he's black, especially if he's black, and your council person, especially if he's black. Where's their position on this foreign policy? Make them stand up and say something. They're your representatives. You voted them to represent you. And the world is looking at them. These people got weak knees, Richard. Mm. You know, just like the world looks at our people when they start all types of dance craze and all kind of music, whether it's positive or negative, it travels the world. People notice the African-American population. Sports figures, the same thing. Whether they run a ball, throw and jump with the basketball, throw a football, whatever. Hit a baseball farther than anybody else. It travels the world. They're well known across the world. Boxing champs. Ali was known across the world, and so was Tyson. With these political figures that represent masses of people here, what they say can be heard across the world. So if they don't have, quote-unquote, power here, that don't stop them from opening their mouths and speaking against this type of stuff. And we should encourage them to do it.
Can I say something?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Brother Obiano.
They call for black representatives and everything. It's a good way to go. Personally, I've been trying to reach out, even in my local constituency here. Karen Bass is my rep. Mm-hmm. And Karen Bass happened to be in the African, she's one of the committees for the violation of human rights in Africa.
Oh, wait a minute. She's on one of the committees, you say?
He's one of the committees. He's a member
mm-hmm.
of the Committee of Issues Pertaining to Human Rights Abuses and relation in Africa in general.
Okay, now you reached out.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead. I don't want to drop you.
I'm not sure how the politics there plays. But what I do, I'm not a politician either. That's the way I speak. All I'm speaking is from the standpoint of a humanity. Because regardless whether you're Muslim or you're Christian, it's the same life. If you appreciate your life, respect someone's life. That's what I'm talking about. I have reached out to Karen Bass on multiple occasions and got zero, or rather generic response back.
You hear that? You hear that, Richard? I want you to just repeat that for our listening audience.
And I'm not blaming her. You know why I'm not even going to go to that level? The people that are supposed to be doing this, the people that are supposed to be, up front, building these bridges, are here in the United States celebrating themselves. Maybe they had a chance, because they had a chance to escape that area. So when they come here, their interest is not about what is going on at home no more. They just want to go to work, make their little money, and then probably once in a year travel home and go and show off. This is a common behavior of Biafrans who are suffering this thing. Even as we are talking, very micro fraction of Biafrans are participating in this restoration effort. Now, put that in perspective. When I'm talking about what we are going through, somebody from my own place is telling me, what are you talking about? Meanwhile, people are being killed. Okay? He's challenging me. He's not helping in any form. So how can I go and say, Karen Bass, why are you not helping us? When the people that are suffering this thing is not even willing to say nothing. Again, like I said here.
It
would have been okay. It would have been okay if maybe 200 people, when I wrote Karen Bass the first letter, she gave me a generic response. If I wrote another one, she gave me a generic response. Then 200 people will mobilize in front of her office and ask her a question. Because she's here to represent me. And by virtue of things, she is representing. She is in the community that oversees the human rights abuses and violations in Africa.
And the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa.
On
Excuse
Africa,
me.
maybe I'm quoting you. I'm saying wrong. That's exactly what she does. Okay, so how come, I cannot break through with her just to tell her our stories? I recall in about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I mobilized some brothers in the Washington area because most of the time they're in Washington to go and meet her. And they met her. She promised to look into it. This is 4 years down the line. Between these 4 years, over 5,000 people have been killed. People are of the same people like it have been killed. And she's still looking into that matter. Okay, I understand their politics, but I think this politics has gone way beyond what is unimaginable. You're thinking, is this present world, what is going on? What is going on? And whenever I think about this, I get very I get too emotional because I'm seeing what is happening. It's not like it's fairy tales. It's not. It's reality. Things are happening. People are being killed every time. People are being killed right now as we are talking. And people say they are talking about human rights. Now, whenever you say something, they always bring the issue of the respect the integrity of that nation. But that nation, for instance, Nigeria, signed a treaty with other nations. And in their treaty, there are some areas where it talks about human rights abuses. So how come these nations, how are they not holding these nations that are known for human rights abuses and violations responsible? They can't conduct investigation no longer. How are they not holding them responsible? Last time there was this comment that President Trump made in the 72nd section of the UN General Assembly in Washington. And he said that the scourge of our planet today is a small group of rogue regimes violate every principle on which the United Nations is based. They respect neither their own citizens nor sovereign rights of their countries. And then he went ahead to say that if the righteous many do not confront this wicked few, then the evil will triumph. When he said that, I was here overcome with emotion. And I said, I hope that this man will go beyond political correctness and just mentioning of Biafra, because that will, all these people that are hiding in the dark, that are so scared to their bones that they cannot stand and say no to this immorality going on. And all they are waiting for, when is Trump going to help? When is this person going to help? But I know the mentioning of remembering us. And this is, again, part of the thing that we're trying to do in Washington, that people will mention their price, so that they will know that people are aware of what is going on. We have been screaming on radio, Biafra. We have a radio that everybody listens to. Our leader, Mazen Nandekano, just finished a broadcast about a few hours ago. The same thing. At Nigeria, as we know, it is being run by an imposter, and the world is watching. The president is not speaking. Amidst this panic, we don't have a president that talks about it. All we hear is Photoshop of his old pictures and chief of staff coming out to talk to the people, secretary of the federal government of Nigeria coming out to address people. Meanwhile, we see Trump, we see Brother Pence side by side. We see the governors, we see the city mayors guiding people, talking to people on what to do with this mess. In Nigeria, as we are talking right now, the president is not speaking. The vice president is not there. The world is maintaining the integrity of a lawless nation. Yeah. A lawless nation. Jungle. People are being killed like flies. It's even better. And everybody's keeping quiet.
Let's take a few calls here. Let's go to caller. What's your name? Where you calling from? Caller, are you there? Let's put them back on hold. Let's go to Toronto, 647. 647?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, everyone in the studio?
How you doing, brother?
I have a question about you as a Biafran. Do you support Kwame Nkrumah's call for Pan-Africanism? But before I say that, I wanted to say that I was checking out. There was a debate between Eldridge Cleaver and Amilcar Cabral from Guinea-Bissau, and Amilcar Cabral took the position that Africans in America were not colonized. Eldridge Cleaver took the position that that African people inside the United States were colonized, and I know that's the people that put on this show. That's their position, and my position too, that we are an internal colony, a colony inside the United States. But I basically wanted to know, once Biafra gets their independence, do you support Kwame Nkrumah's call for Pan-Africanism, like a single African state?
Thank you very much for your question, brother. As a Biafran, we are naturally Pan-Africanist, in a sense that we desire a strong and united Africa. That we also have a strong appreciation of the principle that charity begins at home. Okay? We believe that the strong and united Africa will be made by people building the ground up in their respective communities and countries. Starting businesses, manufacturing, and things like exportations within the neighboring countries. After building this basic foundation, then a borderless community can be established. Just to break it down for you, brother. Think of a union between countries as a marriage. Someone once said, you ought to discover yourself before discovering others. Before getting married, let's say, if you in the line of getting married and building community, because we understand that family is the basic unit of the community. It's an ideal to have an education or grow a business, which in turn brings about financial stability that will support your family that you are trying to build. Otherwise, without that financial stability, it's going to be war in the family, because if you marry, you're going to take care of it. It's a family responsibility. So without this very basic foundation, the marriage is difficult. So Kwame Nkrumah of this, I think in the 60s and 50s, they're thinking of Africa as one big family. But what we have seen today, those Kwame Nkrumah's type of presidency is no longer. What we see in Africa today is puppets that were arranged by the French or the British. They are put in power. Even when the presidents of all these little countries are trying to build their nation, the British will interfere. For instance, I just mentioned Jonathan the last time. Jonathan was doing very good, even though we are in a hurry to see all that he's doing. But the United States determined, and British determined by, what's his name, the British Prime Minister by that time, they told him to get out. They brought in this CNN reporter, Christina Amanpour, always talking to and demeaning the work that the man was doing. They brought in Buhari, and Buhari, as you know, is an ex-general who does not have respect for human lives. He has been a president in the 1984, the same fate that Nigerians suffer. Killing was rampant. Maiming of people was rampant. And this is somebody that they sponsored to come and become the president of Nigeria. And what do we get today? Decay. Complete decay. So when you're talking about Pan-Africanism, there's no single security in every of these African states. We know about Nnamdi Azikiwe, who was the first president of Nigeria. He was also a Pan-Africanist, and good thing he was a Biafran.
You mean Azikiwe?
Azikiwe is a Biafran. Yes.
Azikiwe went to Lincoln University, I think, with Nkrumah, didn't he?
Yeah, all of them are the pioneers of this Pan-African concept. But the thing is, charity begins at home. How can you build a society whereby the leaders are being dictated by the British or French? I mean, we're going to be real, because some of the times, some of these concepts that we bring in, it seems like derealization. We have to be real. People are not allowed to vote their leaders into power. And we are talking about Pan-Africanism. Look at what is happening all over Africa. None of those leaders are people's mandate. They are put there to subjugate the people, to kill the people, so that they can continue to exploit the entire continent. So working together is not a bad thing, but we all have to start from home. Again, family is the unit structure of a community. If the family is torn apart, that society is in a mess. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
Another question, or that was it?
Oh yeah. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
And what type of economic system do you see? Do you believe in socialism or capitalism?
Well, when we talk about socialism and capitalism, I look at it from my cultural point of view. In Biafra, they say, in other words, if you don't work, you don't eat. You encourage people to work. I mentioned earlier that we are Republicans. We move around, we like to be independent. We don't want people giving us checks at the end of the day. We want to work. But on the other side, if we notice that somebody is helpless, we are going to help them. So the general concept of socialism and capitalism is, by the way, European concept. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not a politician.
I think it was Walter Rodney pointed out that no one has worked harder than Africans in the world, but in terms of in the Western Hemisphere, we picked all the cotton, cut all the sugar cane. So I mean, we've proved that we are some of the most hardest working people on the planet Earth. We want to get paid, though.
Yeah, we want to get paid, but we don't want somebody laying down and waiting for checks to come to them without working. Okay, is that not the concept of socialism? To divide up money and the government economy to everybody, whether you work or not? Okay, the situation here in the United States or in other parts of the world where we find ourselves is when we put out this general concept of socialism, people don't quite understand it. But in a real sense, all it's saying is that people may not work and still get checked at the end of the day. That's the way I look at it. Like I said, I'm not a politician. But that's all it is. Whatever belongs to the state is for everybody. And then it keeps people lazy.
You're saying socialism keeps people lazy?
General, in a simpler interpretation, yes. Keeps people lazy.
Oh well, I know I beg to disagree with you on that. But Cuba is a socialist country, and they're some of the hardest working people on the planet Earth, and some of the most helpful people when it comes to the African continent.
Okay, you see, we all have different opinions, and again, I think the discussion is truly to get out some of the meat of what is going on with us. And for me, this big concept of socialism and capitalism.
Yeah, that might be getting a little far off, but it's no problem. Hey, thank you for your call, brother.
Stay all day here,
Thank you.
It creates a problem.
Talk to you soon. Thanks for your contribution. Let's go to 215. 215, are you there?
Good afternoon.
How are you, sir?
This is Brother Poindexter.
How are you?
Are you there?
Great. Yes.
Hello? Yes. When brothers fight, the onlooker takes advantage. And I just want to say that first. And secondly, I want to direct my comments to your guests. I want to talk to you at a higher level than you're talking now. The value of an African American. Well, first off, I'm quite familiar with Nigeria, and especially the Igbo people, the Yoruba's, the Ajos, the Benin. I've been there, I've done that, and the conversation I'd love to have with you, I don't want to have on the telephone or on the radio, because it'll be played again and again, and I'd rather talk to you personally. But you've come to the African American community for what the African American community has to offer you. That's why you're here. And we are African, and we are American. I'm going to talk to you first as an American, because I don't need to talk to you as an African, because, I don't know how much of that you respect. But I can talk to you as an American talking to an African, and that is, what do we gain other than the American values of supporting that cause? Because in your cause is against other blacks. That is the Yoruba or the Hausa and many, many other Eastern Nigerian people. Now, keep in mind,
Well, that's not what he was saying at all, Brother Poindexter. That's not what he was saying at all. And I'm the host, and I'm jumping in here. That's not what he was saying at all. If you listen from the beginning, he told you who was behind all of this. He told you on several occasions who was behind all this and who is pawns in this. That's totally different than what you just said. Now, I'll let you finish.
If you would step out the middle of this, I'd like to talk to him.
No. Well, I'm the host of this program, and you're not going to run the program. You'll ask your question, you'll make it concise, and then we can move on.
Okay. I'll make it as concise as I can.
Thank you.
What is it he's bringing to the table to the African American? What do we get? I mean, what do we get if we get involved with your battle, which will be a battle against, as you say, the Biafran people? Now, I know for a fact that to say Biafra in Nigeria, there's nobody that will sing in concert with you. Everybody at the table will be against you. I've been there. I know what I'm talking about. So I want to say, if we take a side, if we support the Biafran struggle, what do we get in exchange? Can we now buy land in Eastern Nigeria? Can you now support us for visas? Can you do the very practical things that make it possible for us to be a part of a growing anything, opposed to just being a platform for you to put your demonstration for your cause? What's in it for us?
What's in it for you is that Biafra, like I said, is come and join. The Biafra land is your land. African Americans, like I said, over 50% of African Americans are from Biafra. And just to correct that, my cause is against anybody. No, it's not. All we are asking for is this external influence. External influence. For instance, you mentioned that if I say Biafra, that a lot of people will be on the other side of it. No, it's not true. I want to be given a chance. The Biafran cause is asking. We are asking Nigeria. We are asking the world to support Biafra referendum. We are not forcing it on anybody. We want a referendum, a free and fair referendum for people to decide if they want to continue in this contraption called Nigeria. There was a forceful amalgamation of different disparate groups that is not working. Because if I don't share the same belief system with you, if I don't share the same culture with you, there's going to be rancor and contentions all the time. That's what Biafra is asking for. We are asking for our right to live as human beings, the right of self-determination. That's all we are asking for. What African American is going to get in is that African American will get in turn a place they call home, because Biafra door is open for every African American. That's where you come out from in the first place. And it's enough land for everybody to play a role. It's enough land for people to belong.
So you will give them dual citizenship?
If they want to be just Biafra citizenship, it's okay.
You will give them land to buy?
They will have that status. They will have that. They'll be able to have a place. A place called home is that history will be revisited. Remember, the African Americans are forcefully removed from that part of the land. If you watch lately, you have seen a lot of countries talking about African Americans are not going back. For instance, Ghana. Ghana is so because the land is now safe. People can come back and invest. Biafra land is not safe. That's why you don't hear it on the news. They don't promote it because the government in power is so brutal. They are not even open for development. They are not open for business or anything. So what we're asking for, African Americans will be free. It's not even dual. If you don't want to be American again, you want to be a Biafran, that's acceptable. There's so much riches in the land. And we must secure this money. We must be allowed to deal with countries. Even the Yorubas, like you're talking, we are not against the Yorubas. All we are asking the Yorubas is, since your society was nicely run before the coming of the Europeans, there's no such killing as we are witnessing today. Even the northern Nigeria, there's no such killing. If that's their desire to be killing themselves and behaving themselves because somebody did not believe what you believe, it's up to them. But we don't want to be part of that. We should be allowed to decide what we want to do. After all, European countries, you see them today talking about EU. There were problems in the past because a lot of people want to jump on other people. So today, after allowing for self-determination, they all came back together and they're working together as the EU with respect for one another. That's all we're asking for.
Thank you for your contribution, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to 414. 414. 414, are you there?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good evening. I just want to thank Brother Elliot for this show. I think it's a really good show. And I wanted to make a couple of comments. one of the little-known facts about the war that Nigeria and Britain brought against Biafra is that African Americans actually participated in that war. There were 2 African Americans, at the very least 2, that assisted Biafra. One of them, his name was August Martin. August Martin was a Tuskegee Airman. He flew during the Second World War. After he came home, he spent some time maybe setting up businesses, things like that. Eventually, when he saw what was happening, he was so moved that he had to go and help the innocent people that Britain was trying to starve to death. So he flew relief flights, and he flew, planes loaded with food, delivering them to Biafra. Now, eventually, he unfortunately died in an accident. And there was another African American. His name is Juan Correa. Juan Correa was Puerto Rican, actually, and there's a very, very interesting New York Times article that chronicled his experience. And I'm saying all this to just kind of make the point that that African Americans, this is not the first time that this topic is being discussed. Actually, many African Americans are aware of the historical link between African Americans and the Biafran people. And every May 30th, we celebrate our heroes. And August Martin is one of those heroes that we celebrate. Juan Correa is one of those heroes. So, as we approach May 30th, regardless of what you think about, whether or not you go to the Biafra Freedom Rally, think about those African Americans that were so moved to put their lives on the line, and do what they could to see that this nation called Biafra, this true expression of self-determination, would come to be.
Thank you for your contribution, brother.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have a good evening.
Peace. Let's go back to Milwaukee. 414. 414, are you there? Let's put them on hold. Brother Obiano, kind of winding things down. Let's look at some of the things moving forward that you see are changing. Now, and I'm talking about you being an activist, with both experience and growing up on the continent and here. Do you notice a new mindset developing in some of our youth to bring these issues to the forefront, to understand what's been going on and how our people have been used, and to confront these issues? Do you notice a new mindset developing in a segment of the young people out here as being an activist, or you just see some of the same faces all the time fighting the issue and no new minds getting involved? What have you been noticing? Because listen, I've noticed minds changing here, and I see things changing on the continent by guests that we interview, such as yourself, and we've had a slew of people that we've interviewed that are activists on the continent. Myself and Brother Richard can attest to it, where they talk about a new mindset developing among young people. Talk about it from your perspective.
Thank you for that question. First of all, I want to thank the brother that just called in to mention about Harvey Martin for his help to Biafrans. What happened is that I wasn't operating in that level of thinking when he made this comment, but that was a good comment that he made. There are other people who supported Biafrans. Even a senator from Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, raised the issue of Biafra in, I believe it was in 1969. A lot of people witnessed what was going on. There's this young man also called Bruce Mayrock, who set himself ablaze in front of the UN building because of what he saw happening in Biafra, how children were starved. You can Google, you see those pictures. You know, it's really glory to look at. And we have even late Steve Jobs. If you look at the history, how he denounced Christianity was part of what was happening in Biafra, because he couldn't believe that this kind of thing was happening, and the world kept quiet. And that's just 50 years ago. But I can tell you those things are happening up there today. But that said, going back to your question in that about the new mindset developing, I can tell you that a lot of people are looking at this issue of making that connection between the African Americans and Africans here. But most of the time, there's no in-depth connection and foundation laid down for this mindset to really come out to the level that we may need to do to pull this evil down that is afflicting every one of us, both the ones still in Africa and the ones here in the United States. I do know that this young man, Haki Kweli, he always makes videos about Biafra, educating people on how to get Africans to get all over the world. It's some other individual, but this is just somebody that I'm very common with, that, you know, he comes and talks about Biafra. The key concept to education, to knowledge or power is education. So far, we have not done enough, because one is that a lot of people don't want to hear it. And then the other one is the society we live in is so busy. Everybody's just running and trying to, you know, just survive on a daily basis. And again, that brings in, we work so hard, but we are not seeing all those things that we work, because we are busy working. And then there are things that we need to consider to work better, to be able to earn better. So I see the thinking in the direction that we're talking about, but it's not really fully out there. I can tell you that the Europeans we are dealing with have a way of starting trouble, I would say. For instance, here in the United States, I've run into a lot of people who think that I'm just a typical Biafran. They don't know my family. Like I said before, I have a wife, 25 years. And I've run into some of my people here that will tell me, oh, these Africans, you don't even like Americans, to say. And this is a brother that is telling me, or a sister saying this to me. Okay? They think that Africans don't like them. And on the other hand, the Africans, some of them think that Americans don't even care about them. So, but how will this gap close up? It's through education. It's through talking to people, being open, even in your little setting at all times. Be able to talk to people, embrace people, explain to them all these safe aids. That sometimes it's like we can't even give ourselves moments to listen out to one another. We can. Education is power. I heard you when you were opening the program, and I so much appreciate the theme of your program, which it says time. When you put it right, it says it's time for an awakening. And I had some other things you said about knowledge is power. And what is knowledge? If you don't talk to people, they won't acquire the knowledge that they necessarily need to acquire. The reason I also want to appreciate that this interview, because you are giving me all this time to bring in this information that people may hear it, and from there, it lays a good foundation to see that there's no difference between Africans and African Americans, especially Biafrans. We know that most of the slave trade were done there, and most of the people were moved from there to here. I'm not a good historical scholar, but I do know that Marcus Garvey is a Biafran. Allard or Equana was a Biafran. All these people that resisted the Europeans here when they were brought to slavery, we are Biafrans. We are very tough people. If you do your DNA today, you probably find out that you're Biafran. The reason why you guys are working so hard. So I encourage this to continue. Education is the key for our people to begin to think in the direction that you are thinking.
Well, before we leave, before we let you go, I want you to let everybody know where they can reach you, how they can contact you, be a part of the
this conference
to get involved. Just give all your information that you can.
Yeah. Again, my name is Obidio Bienu. We have a website for indigenous people of Biafra here in the United States. It is www.ipobinUSA.org. IPOB in USA, one word, IPOB in USA. That stands for Indigenous People of Biafra in USA.org. You can get my information there. I have my telephone number listed out there because I know that what I'm doing is the work of humanity and nothing else. As a Christian, that I believe in our Lord Yeshua giving his life for humanity, and I'm supposed to do my own part.
You are the first participant on this Uber conference. Please hold while we wait for the others to join. This call may be recorded or transcribed.
We're going to take a brief break. Look like I lost my line, so we're going to take a brief break. And when we come back, hopefully we'll still have our guest on here. We'll take a brief break. Time for Awakening. We'll be right back. Yeah, hold on.
You are listening to Time for an Awakening. Time for an Awakening with host Brother Elliot and Brother Richard on Time for an Awakening Media, part of the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasting or live program scheduling, hit them up at timeforanawakening@gmail.com.
All Insurance Incorporated, an African-American owned and operated insurance agency in business for over 20 years, located at 231 Southeastern Road in Glenside, PA, with other offices in Germantown and West Philadelphia. Call now for commercial insurance quotes, homeowners insurance quotes, automobile insurance quotes, notary and tax services, representing over 15 major A-rated insurance companies, offering a discount on all notary services when you call in for a free quote. Call this number, 215-885-2444. That number is 215-885-2444. 215-885-2444. All Insurance Incorporated.
RG Electrical Inspections provides electrical inspections for realtors, licensed electricians, and homeowners. Licensed and insured underwriter, serving Philadelphia and surrounding area. Call today, 484-268-9837.
Take it easy, brother. Brother X on the line.
Oh, thank you, my good brother. Brother, I admire your knowledge and courage. And we might not always be on the same page, but we are definitely in the same book. Do you listen to an internet show come out of Philly called Time for Awakening with Brother Elliot and Brother Richard?
No, I haven't heard of that. It's good?
Time for Awakening, man. It's a great show. But anyway, in between they breaks, man, they play clips from many of our black leaders of the past. Malcolm X, and they play Rosa Parks. Anyway, Dr. King, they play these clips. And I would hope that maybe the station would think about doing that sometime instead of some of this music. They even got a clip of Fannie Lou Hamer when she was beat by two black guys in the jail. She was beat with phone books.
Yeah. I played that clip myself trying to get people to come out to vote and see what people sacrifice.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. And a lot of our people haven't heard these people talk. And it would be good to hear that. My brother, it was said many more.
Escape the digital plantation. abibitumi.com, abibitumi.tv, abibitumitv.com, abibitumi.store are here for you. You are ready to be free of non-African social media. Don't run from danger, run to safety. abibitumi.com is here for you. You are ready to be free of digital plantations to control your own products. abibitumi.store is here for you. ABIBITUMI, Black Power, ABIBITUMI. The only word you need to know to join your global Kemetiu Black family, to join your interconnected Kemetiu Black communities. Escape the digital plantation now. abibitumi.com, abibitumi.tv, abibitumitv.com, abibitumi.store. We are here for you. Escape the digital plantation.
So don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man.
Welcome back to Time for an Awakening, and sorry about that little technical glitch there. I want to thank our guest that was with us this evening, spent some time, activist, organizer, and continental representative of the indigenous people of Biafra in the USA, Brother Obi Enu was with us this evening. Brother Richard.
Yes, sir.
Interesting conversation, and I don't know what happened there, but we lost our phones briefly, but back up, and we lost him, but it was a good conversation that we had. I think it brought up a bunch of excellent points in relationship to the atrocities that's going on, and what we have to do, and what do people look like who is fighting for their self-determination over a period of time, and maybe a model of what we need to be looking like, and one thing that it kept coming up as far as, them being he said Republican, but self-determining people. And they did fight a war to maintain that, and still having colonial powers, internal ethnic nation resistance and brutality, and a state that's against them. I think that, that kind of mixture and still being able to speak and also showing how afraid they are. Now, I don't know. I hear Brother Ramos say that African Americans are afraid. It's fear that prevents us from, taking a self-determining position. It might be something to that. Wait a minute. Say that again. Who said it?
Ramos, Eunice, the ones that.
Oh, Ramsey. Okay. All right. I didn't. Okay. Yeah. Ramsey Eunice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was.
He did say it was fear.
Right.
Well, see that's why I gave those parables. Well, not parables, living examples when we went to the break the first time and came back, and I talked about the stuff that's going on the continent and the stuff that's happening in our neighborhoods.
Right.
And tried to draw the comparison. The comparison is there because we don't control these things that's happening in our community. I'm talking about as far as the stuff coming in the communities. Right. We can control our behavior and not getting involved in it. But we don't control the stuff coming in, being pumped into the community. And if you got weak minds, somebody is going to get involved. Well, it's the same thing over there. But the only thing, they got a lot more natural resources where you can easily bribe people to become puppets against their own.
Mm. And another thing they have, and this is, from the little that I understand, they also have a strong social network to where, the Igbo people, as he said, they are a self-determining people. So that means their relationships with each other to produce even the level of outcome is very strong in spite of what's going on, inspired by powerful multinational nation states and companies. And then historical, as he said, with the North feudal autonomous ethnic nations. There's understanding in the history and that the Fulani Hausa has always been taking Igbo people from that Southeast region as slaves because of being Muslims. So this internal history has a longer and deeper relationship. A situation going on than just even before the European incursion. That has to be, that is being dealing with, but they in spite of that have been an organized people because there are old people in that area they're strong. That's what he said about jealousy, because they're still able to be a productive people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying is those who come here in North America, who, I'm always thinking, if we're going to think like a South, just even if we're thinking, then we need to also think, well, how do we create real relationships? Not just moral relations, but real relations, which means that we have to create some kind of trading networks. That's what's in my mind. Some kind of association relation, and then we can hold each other accountable politically. But and that's why we as African Americans have to show some level of political and some kind of relationship maturity, because who would come and want to connect with somebody who don't show that they can even produce strength for them own selves in the environment they're in? At least they fought a war. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, you are. But, I think we suffer from the same disease, it's just in different forms.
Right, exactly. That's
it's just in different forms. And I don't think sometimes I don't think we realize it.
Right.
Because, listen, we've been educated to become aliens of one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about on the continent and here.
Right.
Where we don't want to have anything to do with one another. Mm-hmm. Whether you're from the islands, whether you're from here. And I use that term from loosely.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you were born, I'll use the term born, whether you were born in the islands, whether you were born here, or whether you were born on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
We become aliens to one another. Where he's this, he's that. He don't like me, and then you hear it. These Europeans, Richard, the way they're educated, to be proud of themselves, to be proud of their European, they're not really aliens. They might criticize one another here and there, but they don't really become aliens to one another.
Mm-hmm.
They help one another out. They got the European Union, where they make sure that they help their brothers out.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a connection there. But through enslavement and our people being dispersed and colonial governments set up on the continent, we become aliens to one another wherever we are. And we have to fight that double consciousness. It's a fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I respect what Brother Marcus Klein is doing. He's starting early to deprogram these children while it's early.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't come up thinking that there's something that they're not. Mm-hmm. When the brother raised a comment talking about, I'm an African and I'm an American, so what can you do for me as an American? That might seem like it's good to say, or, he's making a statement. But come on here. You're not. If you look at the definition, Richard, let me read this to you, Richard. And I know that you know it, but I'm just throwing it out at you. Colonialism. And I'm just reading the definition out of the dictionary. Is the policy of a country seeking to extend or retain its authority over another people or a territory.
Mm-hmm.
Generally within the aim of economic dominance. In the process of colonialization, colonizers may impose their religion, their economics, their cultural practices on other people. Now, you don't think we've been colonized?
Mm-hmm.
Look at that definition.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's just a rhetorical question. I know that you can answer it. But that's just for people that think that they're American. The only thing American about us is that we live here and we were born here. These Europeans that established this society don't think that you're American. They've been wanting to get you out of here basically since you've been here. It's been a strange relationship, if you want to call it that, between Europeans and our ancestors since we've been here. They wanted to establish this country economically, just like it says here in this definition. Economic dominance. And in order to do that, they had to impose their religion, their cultural practices, and everything on us for control. So I might think I'm American, but I'm not an American.
And that's the history. That's why I like the like you said, the lessons that we can learn in looking at say even Biafra, because I think he did bring out how the British wanted to impose down. They took on the religion. That wasn't their Christianity is not their religion, but they translated it into something that fit them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I say that to say, as you say, there's some who believe that they are Americans, and I think history, our history here, or I've come to believe that there are some, and they have taken that position. They will convince the system and the controllers of the system that they are Americans, that they should be treated like Americans, and they should be getting the benefits that America was set up not to give. And for me, I'm saying, okay, you got that. But I'm looking at it for those, and I don't know if we can say, like in the Biafra, he said indirect rule. I don't know, for those of us who don't look at it that way, that we are Americans and that America was set up to at some point incorporate or to bring us in to the American project, other than the way they did. I don't know if we are under indirect rule, but I know, as you say, in us thinking, and as he said, the representative said, in our knowledge, we can say that we're going to operate like we're indirect rule, which puts the agency back on us. I'm not giving European Americans or people who want to believe that they are Americans or they have some entitlement. I'm not giving them that agency over me historically as a people or as a group. And I have models. Call it the Maroons model. Call it those who ran from, liberated themselves. Those are models of people saying, I know this thing ain't set up for me.
Yeah, but listen, I understand that clearly. But you're an American. I'm saying that rhetorically with tongue.
Yeah.
Tongue
I mean, that's
you got to
what
fight.
They want us all to say.
Yeah, you got to fight all the time for this right. I got to fight for my voting to be protected. I got to fight for this or that. I got to fight for that right. And soon as it's almost like a boat with holes. Soon as you try to address one issue, here's another leak that done sprung out.
And that's why looking at the in this relationship because here I have I can utilize some tools, because I can go to Bass just like the brother did and say, well, why you ain't looking at Biafra as an American citizen? He has to say, as a Biafran, I can say only because I'm supposed to have. I got not just a passport. I got a birth certificate. Y'all say I'm a citizen. I know I'm not, but y'all say I am. So I'm coming to this representative, whether I put them in or not, to say, well, why are you not supporting this policy, or why are you supporting this policy that is harming these people? That's not what we send you there to do. I can be able to say that and still say, I'm not an American, that I'm working towards self-rule. It might not be in my generation, but what we're working towards is self-rule. I can say that, and I could be working that. But there's others who saying, and this is where I get upset with them, they're silent, because they're saying they don't mind American imperialism. We're going to go and pull out we're going to classify a voted representative of a nation, a drug dealer, put a bounty on his head.
$15 million.
Right?
I mean, that's Richard, if you just think about it, that's crazy. And nobody says it. Listen, I don't expect Europeans to say anything. But you got black representatives. How do you justify this?
And look on the other side. Here is a country that has been isolated. What? Cuba's been isolated?
Over 50 years.
Right. And out of that isolation, have been able to produce more doctors and then create a healthcare infrastructure for their people that right now, in this moment, we would have wished we had for the public health crisis we're under.
Yeah, but we're Americans. With over 80% of the national budget spent on weapons, we're Americans. If we have adopted this mentality of these people, then we're more sick than it's no comment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want to be that sick, where I value money and weapons and destruction over basic human life.
Mm-hmm.
That's sick.
And I'm, like, because the project I'm engaged in, and I think that we have to have these various voices. So I'm not, but the way I'm one of them, what's the Clydesdale horses? They got the blinders on their head. I can only see straight ahead, and the straight ahead is there has to be a space that I create that I can protect, that will give me the peace and security for the future children and their children, knowing that I know the road. I know to the right of me is rocky, to the left of me is water, and in front of me is mines. I know that, but I got to move ahead compared to, what's that? And now I'm sorry, y'all. Dancing in the rain, just dancing in the
singing in the
rain. No, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's just that, and we have to make light of this in order to be serious about it, because we have so many obstacles. But the thing that I think that we have to be clear of with continental Africans that are here in North America, we have to demonstrate a relationship that is practical. And if you just can't offer me what's over there when you're here, we have to be able to do something. And I ain't saying you just have to open yourself up because you're here, because you open yourself up, some of these Negroes here just take everything you got.
Richard, you got about 10 more minutes?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go to 646. We got 10 minutes. 10 minutes left in the program. 646.
Hey, my good brother, Elliot and Richard, how are y'all doing?
Good.
Are y'all staying safe? I heard. Listen, now, I just want to be clear on something, because I didn't really hear it, but, somebody hit me up and said to me that, did the brother say that he was an American, and what your guest was talking about, what did it have to do with him? Was that what happened?
Well, where did you get from it, Richard?
No, he was asking a practical question as an American. As an African American born in America, and you're asking for support. What do we get out of it? What could African get out of it, out of providing support?
Well, all I'm going to say is that if you ask that question of an African who comes over here looking for your assistant as the so-called, let's be clear on this, the most dominant intellectual African supposedly on the planet, the most intelligent, the most well-educated, the most rich in a sense, the most schooled, all of those things. If you have to ask a question why somebody from the continent would come here and ask you for your assistance, then you out of your effing mind and basically just stay here, be an American, be oppressed, and die.
I apologize. I apologize because I want to make sure I'm clear. Because basically, and I probably said it differently, I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying in order for us to be able to, because there's some things we can do together to strengthen each other where we are. Now, if I was on the continent, I should be going there with something and creating relationships there to assist them and me while I'm there. And they should have the right to say, well, when you come here, what you got? What is it that you come here for? Other than that, you would be a drain to me.
Yeah,
I just wanted to be clear about that.
If I'm understanding correctly, the brother was coming here with that understanding in mind, asking us to go back and help them solve the problems that we have the ability to solve. Now that's what I was getting from hearing the brother. I listened to the brother for a good hour and like 15, 20 minutes. So, unfortunately, I had tuned off to do something else when the question was asked to him, you know what I'm saying? But the reality is this. The African over on the continent is looking for us to assist and help him in his development. Unfortunately, some of us are too sick to realize it and understand it. Always remember, the majority of the so-called best Africans do what? They go to two places, America and Europe. Most of all, they go hang out with them freaks in Paris for some reason. I don't understand because, I know a couple of Africans that always talk about how they love the clothes in Paris, and I had to get on their black behinds all the time about it. But that's another story. But the majority of the brightest from Africa come here to get educated. Kwame Nkrumah and some of the others have came here, learned the principles that they use to go back home to try and develop their countries. And what happened to them? Their black asses was killed by America. That tells you a lot. But the reality is, how could we ever think as so-called Americans when these devils here don't want us here at all and looking to do everything in their power to get rid of our black asses?
Well, I just, as I said, and I apologize because I just, I think that, we all make choices. Right?
Yeah, but the choice.
And for us who think differently, unless the choice that others make harm what we're trying to do, those who think differently, engaging in what other people's choices, limits the ability for us to, especially when we're in a weakened condition, to do the things that we have to do. That's I guess my line of thinking. I don't know if I'm correct.
Richard, if you nation building, you have to be on one type of accord, because remember this: if the African here went back home and did the things that we were supposed to do back home, and develop back home on the level that we should develop back home, and figure out a way how to get the Chinese, the French, the Americans, and the rest of these bastards out of there and develop Africa the way we should, we'd be in a whole different predicament. Because I believe if we ever got to that point where we could sustain ourselves on the continent, a whole lot of these sick Negroes would wake up and see how they're being treated here and how they could go back home and be treated a certain way and strive for something better, which is sovereignty. And the sad thing is, whenever you feel as though your position here is greater than home, then you basically done bored the Sinai. You done been Jim Jones. You just basically, truthfully, of no value. You know what I mean? You have to realize one thing. They always have tried to keep us divided from one another as a people and have never placed us in a position or tried to assist us in developing Africa into what it could be. Because they know if we ever got control of the motherland and we ever controlled it, they'd be in the world's of trouble. Because remember, the world can't do nothing and move forward in technology without the mineral resources of Africa.
But
so,
Elliot, the other what Jay brings up is the other example and what makes our reality so complex but simple, right? Because that and what the representative was saying also is that the House of Fulani, right? Mm-hmm. When the British came in, because they already had a infrastructure and the mayor and their structure, they didn't go for anything the British brought to them.
Yeah, they didn't accept it. Mm-hmm.
They fought them, right? And eventually, I mean, they didn't take that religion. They wasn't letting them take their land. But the House of Fulani was already engaged in the slave trade. They were already taking the Igbos as slaves, raiding their villages. So this is African on African, and those people, because they were so effective and they were doing that before Europeans came, the British made a deal with them for this indirect rule to have them be the military, right? Which now runs the state. The president of Nigeria comes out of the family line of the House of Fulani, right?
Yeah, but that's what I was telling the caller. Mm-hmm. That certainly we can talk about the symptoms, so to speak, but let's talk about ground zero. Let's talk about the origin of this disease, because they always hide their hand like they don't have anything to do with it. When right. they're the wizard behind the curtain.
But at the same time, and this is, I think it's important for us to understand the Muslim House of Fulanis were already engaging in the slave trade before the Europeans came.
Oh, I understand that. But, I mean, look at what you're talking about. You're still talking about another foreign invader.
No, these are indigenous Africans who took on their identity. They took on Islam. That's what I'm talking about, a foreign invader. Okay, I got you.
Well, listen. Let me just say this, brother. It's always an honor when y'all brothers have guests like the brother from the continent on that could show that we need to be working with one another to move ourselves forward. And it's always good to have brothers call up and say the type of things that they say. The unfortunate thing is when they're not young. You know what I mean? Whenever you get an older person to say things like that, man, it's scary. Because remember, the things that they've seen, the things that they've probably been a part of. And when you get to be a certain age and you don't have the love and the feelings of liberation for your people and to want to have a certain degree of sovereignty for those that are moving forward, yo, man, you've been totally brainwashed. You've been totally brought into a system that with all that's going on at this time is showing you that they have no love for you, that they don't want your black behind, that they have no use for you, that they're basically trying to wipe you off the earth. Now, people may think that because of this virus, and you're looking at the United States of America, just think about the deaths of our people and others. And don't put it totally on the problems of high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, and all that other stuff, heart disease. Don't put it totally on that. It plays a part in it. I'm not going to take that away. But the reality is, there's something in the mix that's leading to our demise as a people in this pandemic that's not affecting others. And I'm not going to blame it on Negroes not putting a mask, putting gloves, or staying in the house, because there's a lot of us who have been in positions because of the jobs that they have and things of that nature, who have been as precautious as possible, that have still caught this disease. So we got to put things in the total context, and that something that unfortunately the person who I read 30-some years ago, Brother Hakeem Madabuti, said that the white man is your perpetual enemy, even though you don't believe that now, today, that the reality is the white man is your perpetual enemy. And he's looking to kill you every chance he gets. And unfortunately, we as a people don't realize that. And that's the tragedy in all of this, because a lot of our people are dying and being misplaced. And, hey, it ain't going to get no better no time soon. This is probably going to be the worst that we face as a people since Jim Crow. So listen, Brother Elliot and Brother Richard, man, thank you all again for coming in tonight. Hey, Elliot, you need to get on your Friday night job, man. You know, when people quarantine, they need to have the knowledge and wisdom of you and your sidekick, Richard. I really appreciate you under quarantine taking the night off so you can sit with a little bit of cognac, brother.
Cognac.
Get yourself together. All right, Elliot?
Peace.
Get it together.
Yeah,
Talk
right.
to y'all later.
Right.
Have a beautiful night, my brother. Put me on mute.
Right. Richard, come to the end of another program, man. You know, I wanted to get a chance to talk about that the forum that they had that was broadcast today. I broadcast a portion of it on Time for an Awakening this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
That's
what. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, but we'll talk about it maybe Friday on Friday's program.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
One of the gentlemen that you want to have on here within the coming weeks, he was scheduled to be on, but something happened.
Yeah.
Were you listening at the time?
Yeah.
So we'll work on it and get him on here because he's been on before us, and I don't think it'll be a problem us bringing him back on. Before we leave, just like to give out the lineup: Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. African Perspectives with Brother Ushi, always interesting dialogue and conversation on African Perspectives with Brother Ushi. That's Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. On Mondays and Wednesdays, starting this Monday at 1 o'clock to 3, Black People's Matrix with the return of Brother Franklin Jones. That's Mondays and Wednesdays from 1 to 3 on Time for an Awakening Media. Later on that evening from 6 to 8, Brother Jihad Ahmed and Acres of Diamonds. That's 6 to 8 on Time for an Awakening Media. And from 9 to 10, every first and third Monday, Conversation Reparations with NCOBRA, the NCOBRA's program. On Tuesdays, Black Reality Think Tank with Dr. William Rogers from 8 to 10 on Time for an Awakening, and on Saturdays also from 3 to 5. Black Reality Think Tank Part 2. I don't know whether you heard it this weekend, Richard.
Oh, no, I didn't even know it was on.
It
Okay.
debuted this Saturday, but it's Saturdays from 3 to 5 on Time for an Awakening. It's some other programming going to be starting really soon, and some dynamic and interesting programming. I think the listening audience will be enjoying it. We'll give more details in the very near future. And Fridays, Time for Awakening is back from 8 to 10 on Time for an Awakening Media. I want to thank everybody for listening to the program this evening and our guests. Lively discussion as always, and we'll be back on Friday, Lord willing, to continue on this path towards an awakening. Peace.
Peace.
If you're driving through the country on a lazy afternoon, or you're watching your children playing after school, they seem to be so unaware of, I know, the things that they'll soon have to take care of. children.